Morning everyone, and welcome back to the Mindful Homestead. We've had some new subscribers to the channel, so I just want to say thank you. My name is Jack. I am the primary person you'll see on this channel. You'll also see my wife Jackie and our child Emma. So welcome. Thanks for swinging by. We've gotten to, well, let me just show you. You can probably see behind me. We're in the heart of fall here in New Hampshire. Now, if you watched the last video, which I'll link up in the corner, you'll see zero color in the trees. It's all green. And this happened pretty quickly this year, like way quicker than normal. Right around Columbus Day is when color starts to really hit their peak, at least in our region of the state. But this year, because of a drought, we're currently like almost a foot of rain behind normal. The cold weather snap we had a couple weeks ago, the trees just kind of switched on and they said, hey, we're ready for fall, let's do this. So the colors that you're seeing right now, as pretty as they are, they're not exactly typical for this time of year. And it's kind of throwing everybody for a little bit of a loop. Let's talk meat birds. We tried something new this year. We tried, instead of running them in the chicken tractors that you see behind me there and moving them every day on pasture, we went straight to full pasture, I'm calling it. Essentially what we did was we gave them a 2,000 square foot enclosure out here in the yard, and we just let them have at it. So essentially, instead of having a chicken tractor where they were still confined, even though they were getting new grass every day, we just gave them this whole area and they were free to run around and be chickens. The real test of this method is going to come when we weigh them out after processing on Friday. So again, we hope for between 5 and 7 pound birds. We may be a little bit heavier than that this time, just by looking at them. It's kind of hard to tell, but we'll know if this method works then. Eight bags of pig feed left on that pallet, meaning it's time for another one. 47 days, I think, till processing. Jackie's back there. Another pallet has 40 bags. That should do it, and then anything that's left over we can give the chickens. Pigs are looking really good, almost too good. Gonna be a little bit interesting to see what they weigh out in November when we process them, because they're pretty big already. So let's talk knives on the homestead for a little bit. Knives are going to be one of those tools that every homesteader should have, and they should have a decent one. I say decent, but I'm not going to recommend that every homesteader go out and buy a $200, $300 folding knife, because those do exist. And while they're cool and they have lots of awesome features and crazy, you know, super steels that never need sharpening, and when they do need sharpening, they're super easy to sharpen, and maybe they have Damascus steel or, you know, triple layer laminated steels and Hammonds and things like that. But when you're out on the homestead, you want a tool. You don't necessarily want something that's that cool. So I want to talk a little bit about the knife that I use and why I chose this knife. A lot of the features on the knife that I have make it a good everyday carry knife for virtually anybody, whether you're working in an office or you work in a stock room, or you know, you're just looking for something you can carry out for a night on the town. So the knife that I carry every day here on the homestead is a CRKT M16 10KS. Not very big knife, you can see in relation to the size of my hand. So why would I choose a knife like this as my general all-around everyday knife on the homestead? One, it's low profile. When you fold this thing up, in my pocket, it doesn't stick more than that far out, which is always a plus. You don't want these things getting caught on stuff. To my point about not having a $200 to $300 knife, a very expensive pocket knife, I have caught my pocket knives. That was a nice catch right there, I caught it. I have caught my pocket knives more times on the Premier One poultry fencing that we use than I think anything else in my entire life. I've never had more moments where I've reached down from my pocket and been like, where's my knife? And then gone back to the poultry netting that I was working with 10 to 15 minutes earlier and just found it hanging on the poultry netting. So a knife that you carry on the homestead, or a knife that you EDC, which is everyday carry if you're not familiar with it, you are going to lose those knives. You're going to beat those knives up. It doesn't make sense to have an expensive knife that you want to carry every day. If you make tons of money and you want to carry a $200 knife every day, hey, go for it. Even the Benchmade 940 is a very popular knife for EDC. I see a lot of homesteaders carrying it. I know Wrangler Stars carried it in the past.
I wasn't gonna buy it, I really was. It was just too much money, but she said she took it, grabbed it, took it up to the cash register.
I know Al up at Lumna Acres has one that I've seen him use before.
Main reason why we built this hay wagon. I could have had the construction company that did the dirt work haul this down there, but our field is way too muddy and wet for that.
It's a great knife, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a fairly expensive knife for me if I'm going to be traipsing through the woods and possibly losing stuff. For me, I would rather have a less expensive knife that I'm able to keep a good edge on than a more expensive knife that I run the risk of losing and then having to buy a cheap knife anyway because I can't afford another expensive knife. So why did I choose this particular knife for my homestead everyday carry? Well, if you look at the tip of this thing, you'll see it's got a kind of a unique blade profile. And this is called a Tonto blade, where it comes down straight from the point and then forms an angle here and then comes down the rest of the blade. There's no belly to it. It's a straight edge here. And then this particular model has some serrations down at the bottom. Not all the M16s have those serrations, but this particular one does. And I like a Tonto for an everyday carry for these reasons. You have a tip up here that you can sharpen to a razor sharp point. It's essentially a needle up here. And because of this Tonto design, where it comes in at an angle, it tends to have a slightly stronger tip than some other knives out there, especially drop point designs and spear points and things like that. Now, I'm not advocating anybody take their knife and use it as a pry bar or a screwdriver or anything like that. They're knives, they're blades, they're designed to be sharp edges. They're not designed for prying and other things like that. However, most people who use their knives hard will have a knife with a broken tip. And what I like about Tonto designs is typically this design is going to be a little bit stronger if you are misusing your knife in a way that you're not supposed to. The other nice thing about this Tonto design is you can see I've got a nice bevel on there. You can actually use this if you need to scrape something. Like if you need to take a sticker off of glass or any, scrape some residue. This flat edge right here actually works like a razor blade, which is really cool. Now, I talked about that super fine tip that you can get on the point here. Then you have this tip down here, which acts as a second point. If I'm cutting open boxes or doing something that's not necessarily, fine work, and I want to keep a sharp edge on my tip up here, what I'll do is I'll actually rock this blade back and I'll just use this point to drag across the top of a cardboard box. So with a Tonto design like this knife, you have the ability to have multiple work surfaces. The other nice thing about a Tonto blade is it's easy to sharpen because you don't have any recurves in here, which is kind of like a belly of the knife that swoops in here and then comes back and around. You don't have any weird angles. So for first-time knife users, these are pretty easy to sharpen. You can literally rock them down on a stone and you can just push them like that and you're able to get a fine edge on this thing. Other than that, reasons why I really like this knife. It has a metal handle here. You have two metal scales. It's a frame lock design, which means that the frame of the knife actually locks the blade into place. So there's no play. It's a really strong design. It's a low-tech design, but it works extremely well. You've got some jimping here at the top of the blade, which gives you some texture to grip on. There's some jimping also on that pivot bolt right there. And overall, even though it's a small knife and I have big hands, this blade fits really well in my hands. It feels comfortable. I'm able to use it. I can choke up on it if I'm doing really fine work. I can grip back on it if I need to do just like a big cut or a big sweeping cut. Not a tactical knife by any means, but if I did need to fight with it, I could take a reverse grip on it, which is, you know, unorthodox, but you know, if you need to stab down on something or kind of slash at somebody, it would work in a self-defense scenario as well. The upshot to all of this is that I think I got this knife for 20 bucks, which is not a lot by any means. I've had it now for close to a year, probably over a year actually. And I've been daily carrying it now for close to 6 months, and it looks great. It's still in decent shape. I do use it. You can see a little bit of the finish. I don't even know if the video is going to pick it up, but there's a little bit of the finish rubbing off up here. There's some wear on the clip, a little bit of wear on the back of the handle. But other than that, this thing has been rock solid. It doesn't have an assisted open on it, which some people like, you know, so if you don't flick it, it won't go all the way out. You know, once you get used to it, you can just, it'll flip right open for you. So it is a solid pivot. It's not a ball bearing knife by any means, but it will pivot open for you. I like not having an assisted opener, and the reason why is if you travel or you go anywhere, there are states where assisted openers are not allowed. You know, in reality, an assisted opening knife is not a switchblade or an automatic opener. But some states treat them similar to those knives. So, you know, you could be walking down the street in a state like Connecticut or Massachusetts, and if you had an assisted opening knife, you might get into trouble. I'm not saying you will. I don't think there's a cop on the face of the earth that would really give you a hard time for an assisted opening knife, but there are laws on the books in certain states that say you can't have assisted openers. So, you know, a well lubricated and adjusted non-assisted opener, it opens plenty quick for me, especially with a flipper tab on the back. So that's all I got for you today. If you are a homesteader or a farmer who's looking for a solid blade that you can carry around every day, I would give the M16 from CRKT a shot. I mean, it's certainly been around for a long enough time where it's proven itself kind of in the EDC world. But if you haven't ever heard of it before, take a look at it for 20 bucks. I don't think you can go wrong. If you've got more money to blow and you want to buy a nicer blade, by all means, do it. But the Tonto design on this, I would definitely think about it regardless of whether you're going to go the more expensive blade or this one. Having a Tonto design for a homestead knife, I think just makes sense because of all the different uses you can get out of the blade profile. Thanks for watching and have a great day, everybody. We'll see you around. Bye.